Now me call it King Kong. Every song I write, hit song. Every song I write, hit song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself, put nobody above myself. Energy, energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see. What a sight to see. What a colossal. Working and working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on this right on the corner. Hey, make way when I'm weird there. Hey, tell the ears that them stay there. Hey, that is your destiny. To be what you ought to be. Even if no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one to see you fly. Them no one to see you touch sky. Them no one to see you fly. Hey. Them no one to see you fly. Them no one to see you touch sky. Them no one to see you fly. Hey. Never wanna see you fly. Never want you touch the sky. Never say never. Never say never. Reach nowhere, so you have to find a way.
It's good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just realized a technical difficulty. I can't do nothing about it. So we're still jamming though. Well, I just gonna start off. Yeah, I just had a full circle moment just now come to my mind. And I wouldn't say that I originally said this when it happened. But the second time, I definitely said it. When the premier was made Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Team Unity government, I say that's a problem because he's the premier and his job is to be in the country. So, well, that would not have been applicable the first time neither. I was the deputy, so it was all right. But the second time, I said that's a problem. And when you look back and you hear what the premier said, he had two cabinet, you know? They also had secret meeting, and you got to be in the place. Another thing to consider, maybe it's about time that if you're from Nevis and you run in the federal, run for the, and you win a federal seat, you're supposed to live in Bath State. Reason why I say that, in other countries, when you have the situation, the persons move to where the parliament is. So, for example, the congressmen from Hawaii, they don't live in Hawaii. You can't do that no more. That's not where the laws are being made. You could go back for like vacation, and I say like when you get some time off in every time you're doing something. But appear that with the fact that the premier alluded to the fact that secret things was going on. And maybe part of the responsibility that got to happen is that when you win a federal seat, you got to go Bastille, go live, because Bastille is where everything going on. You need to be on the ground to be able to assess and give feedback. And that might be something we could cut out this dual representation. Another last thing, because we're going straight into the rhythm tonight, really and truly. Let me see if anybody will give me any more. I mean, I get over there. So I would have mentioned last week that, from my understanding, Nevis would have consented to having the SSC legislation applied to Nevis. And actually, it's a provision in the law. It's the very last provision of the SSC, indicating that the island of Nevis, under the Constitution, has consented to the law applying in Nevis, because that's how we got to work. We have a very, as I said last week, unique circumstance, unique situation. St. Kitts and Nevis is a college, of course. Anyway, supposed to be getting to Mr. Hegseth. Yeah, so we're gonna deal with some geopolitics. First of all, we heading out the gear. We're gonna listen to the Secretary of War. I had to pause because Minister on my brain, whereas in America he's Secretary. But we're gonna hear what the Secretary of War had to say. I feel like these comments are interesting to listen to from a Caribbean perspective. So let me know.
Good morning, everybody. Well, General Donovan and I are pleased to welcome all of you to Southern Command this morning.
Yeah.
Without the force of arms, without our militaries, we cannot keep our country safe. Crossings at our southern border, at the U.S.-Mexico border, have dropped to the lowest.
Maybe hear what I got to say, Pete.
Well, good morning, everybody. Well, General Donovan and I are pleased to welcome all of you to Southern Command this morning. Without the force of arms, without our militaries, we cannot keep our country safe. Crossings at our southern border, at the U.S.-Mexico border, have dropped to the lowest number in history. Murders nationwide have plummeted by more than 20%. We now have operational control of our southern border. 0 people are crossing our southern border. We will not rest until we have complete operational control of every inch of all of our borders. This is what we did in World War II, just like we sunk ships with torpedoes in World War II. Last month, we went a few weeks without targeting a single boat. Why? Well, because we couldn't find a whole lot of boats to sink. And that's the whole point, is to establish deterrence from narco-terrorists who have been able to traffic almost unfettered. And if the consequence was simply to be arrested and then released, well, that's a consequence they'd already priced in a long time ago. A new dynamic had to be put in motion in order for their decision cycle to change. More closely together to achieve a shared objective, and do so aggressively. All the nations represented in this room are offsprings of Western civilization. Our nations are and always will be united by our heritage, our history, and geography in this new world. We share the same interests. And because of this, we face an essential test: whether our nations will be and remain Western nations with distinct characteristics, Christian nations under God. Didn't provide the U.S. Southern Command with the support that it needed. It was a command chock full of one of the dumbest phrases in military history, which used to be echoed from the former Defense Department in the previous administration. They would say it over and over and over again, was "our diversity is our strength." It's the single dumbest phrase in military history. Because what is our strength is our unity. Our strength is in our shared purpose, in the training we do together, the capabilities we have to do, we can do together. In our context, the Constitution we swear an oath to defend together, the uniform we wear together. That is our strength. Knowing the remarkable story of this country, they knew that President James Monroe was once an orphan. When adversaries conduct incursions in this hemisphere, off the coast of a U.S. state, Alaska, or off the coast of Greenland, or in the Gulf of America, or the Caribbean, that is a direct threat to the United States homeland and to peace in this hemisphere. when adversaries control ports or infrastructure along strategic choke points for U.S. and hemispheric trade, such as the Panama Canal, or install military facilities just miles off our shore. That is a threat to the United States homeland and peace to this hemisphere.
Okay, let me pause it. The boss don't say a lot. Yeah, heal up the boss. Heal up. Well, you don't hear directly that he don't say anything happening in the Caribbean, any port controlled by a foreign country, that is the responsibility of the United States. For those of you, when he was in high school, or third palm, fourth palm, the Monroe Doctrine, yeah, this coming back full force. And this is what we spoke about earlier in the year when we spoke about the US. It was the defense strategy. It was some from a military perspective. And also when we were speaking about the sovereignty issue. Sovereignty. Whatever.
When terrorist killers and cartels capture strategic infrastructure, resources, and entire towns or cities close to U.S. borders and U.S. shores, or profit from mass illegal migration, that is a threat to the United States homeland and a threat to all of you as well. They seek to displace the historic North-South relationship that we've always shared with some sort of a new global South that excludes the United States and other Western nations, but includes non-Western powers and other adversaries. The answer to our challenge is not to ignore our geography in the name of global interests, but to embrace our shared geography in the name of national interests.
That's not my understanding of what the global South is. I thought the global South was just basically smaller countries who are trying to find alternative situations. This is where you get, for example, BRICS. Never mind China. But China, as I said, China look at itself as this kind of small country. So
that is why President Trump has drawn a new strategic map from Greenland to the Gulf of America to the Panama Canal and its surrounding countries. At the Department of War, we call this strategic map the Greater North America. Why? Because every sovereign nation and territory north of the equator, from Greenland to Ecuador and from Alaska to Guyana, is not part of the global South. It is our immediate security perimeter in this great neighborhood that we all live in. Each one of these countries.
see, once again, we hear about Guyana. This is directly relevant. This, and also he spoke in the beginning about a new paradigm because people don't factor in the fact that they might get locked up. So lock up time for a lock up thing. So that's why that explains the boats being destroyed basically in the Caribbean Sea. And I mean, I wish this was framed better, but you hear the words that is a security perimeter. There is no aspect of like partnership or anything. The Caribbean is a security perimeter, a buffer zone, backyard.
Countries border either the North Atlantic or the North Pacific. Each one of these countries sits north of the two basic geographic barriers that exist in this region, the Amazon and the Andes Mountains. This is basic geography that we don't teach in schools as much as we should. This is not a one-way street. Every partner in this region has to do more and invest more in your security as well. We, like you, want a hemisphere of sovereign, secure, and prosperous nations. We will make the Americas great again. Thank you, and God bless you. Affirming our relationships, respecting sovereignty, recognizing the strategic importance of this hemisphere, and declaring our intent to expand multilateral and bilateral cooperation. Our commitment to our mission objectives only increases as our advantages continue to increase. We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. Again, our munition status only increases as our advantage increases.
This Iran. We ain't come here for Iran. I just wanna hear the Caribbean perspective. I think it's very important to factor these things in when reporters going and asking why the Caribbean can't be strong. Because you're a buffer zone. If you need a reference point as to what a buffer zone is, look up Ukraine, look up Poland, right? You could even look up certain parts of China. And China, they do the same thing in the South China Sea, by the way, both. Like, that's their backyard kind of circumstance. Wait. What is this? Okay, I don't know what that was. Okay, it's time to go to the National Assembly. Oh my God, I was muted. So I was saying, I thought it was important to hear from Mr. Hegseth. These are points in time where you could get an idea, an outlook as to how the United States sees Caribbean. It sees it as a security perimeter, buffer zone. You want to know how buffer the zones are? Think about Ukraine. Think about Poland. And I was also saying that China does do the same type of thing, attempting to in the South China Sea by saying that's their backyard. So this is the behavior of great powers. And there is no situation where we're not going to have to deal with the United States of America. So when he speak about the connection from a geographical standpoint, that never, ever going to change. And so there must always be the attempt to have dialogue and be able to work with each other. We're getting to the National Assembly now. We ain't wasting no time. We're getting to the National Assembly. There was a march on Friday. My wife attended the march. She observed, and I also have other reporting from elsewhere, and I also observed from what I saw that the march was mostly, in my estimation, dealing with Rastafarians and mostly elder Rastafarians. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying that this can be the start of something, but I just wish that the representation was of a wider span. I wish that young people were engaged. I wish that other persons who are not Rastafarians were engaged. And I understand some people have issues And I don't think that their issues should be ignored. I feel like really and truly these persons should be still communicated with, and their issues need to be dealt with, because the harassment what happening right now, it really shouldn't be looked at as a banky situation, but it should be used to eliminate that overall once and for all. And in certain circumstances, when we're marching, the march supposed to be more than for us. We're supposed to be doing it for us individually, but we also supposed to be looking at more of a collective picture. But as I say, I believe I hear some people with some issues, and I don't think that those should necessarily be ignored, but they should try to be understood so that we could build a greater coalition. And this goes not just for the cannabis issue, but for, as I say, any issue you may have in general. Got to find ways to get um, a broader engagement base. I think one of the ways is to do it electronically, personally. Cut down on this need for a bunch of necessarily live meetings, but that's just one little thing. Anyway, so in light of the fact that we're on the cannabis issue, just want to hear some words that were said by the AG and the Prime Minister with regards to cannabis. And later we're going to react to some stuff what the Premier said also with regards to cannabis.
Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise on Minister's statements with your leave to speak about cannabis. Madam Speaker, 3 years ago, we came to this honorable House after many months of consultations with the Rastafari community in relation to bringing our laws into compliance with the Constitution as a result of the High Court decision in the Ras Sankofa case. I was reflecting on that time, and I looked at
I'm going to pass to say that in the decision, the court originally gave the government 3 months to rectify the law. And it was not until the Labour government come in and did it. And Labour still took a year and a half.
my speech during the debates in relation to the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act 2023, which was groundbreaking, a first in the Caribbean. And if you allow
Now, this is one little way how Labour is kind of infected. Eh? No, this is an example of when other politicians will tell you something is world class or is the best. In this scenario here, the AG, and I think this is going to be echoed later. I only saying I think, but on record, the AG is saying that this is the first legislation to recognize Rastafari rights in the Caribbean. How you gonna get that though when Jamaica exists and Jamaica refuted in newspapers and so as well when they heard about it? So this not gonna
me, I just want to read very briefly from my presentation then to set the stage for what I'm going to discuss today. And then I said, my personal ventures to the Gideon Force Farm in Old Road over the past few weeks were open, honest, and real. I learned much more about Rasta than I ever imagined, and the reasoning with elders was eye-opening. It fortified my personal energy towards getting this Rastafari Rights Recognition Bill suitable. I thank the ORU for their patience with us and their honest input, which was critical in crafting this bill being debated today. I say that to say, Madam Speaker, that the bill was created after consultation with the community, the Rastafari community. And we believe that we came to a position that everyone was.
In politics, one of the reasons why there's always say politics is local. Politics is local. You have to write it down, you have to put it on the shot. Politics is local. He's saying they spoke to the Rasta community. He ain't saying that they spoke to the Rasta communities. I wonder if the AG think that there is one Rasta community because it's only one place he's saying he went, When in reality, if you're dealing with on the ground in any given space in time, you're dealing with multiple different Rasta communities. He got them in a Sinkit and he got them in a Nevis, and he got some in a Sinkit who are more in common with some in a Nevis, and vice versa. So, anyway, there we go.
Pleased with. And during that process, we didn't just pass the laws. What we decided to do is educate, because it's important for everyone to understand. So part of the process of developing the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act, the Cannabis Amendment Act, the Freedom of Conscience Cannabis Act, and the Smoking Designated Areas Act was to educate. And during that process, we created a website specific to educating the public about cannabis use, what is allowed and what is not allowed. That website went live in summer 2023. It's been there for 3 years. And I just want, if you would allow, Madam Speaker, to go through the website.
Yeah, me just turn it down a little bit, but I just want to be fair so that you understand at this moment in time. You see this website and this effort to educate people, this is a good thing. This is a good thing, Wale, brother.
The new cannabis regime legalizes religious and freedom of conscience cultivation, possession, and use of cannabis. The Constitution protects freedom of conscience.
I just want I to notice the word that was used in the first part that is not decriminalize, is it? Legalize. Legalize. And then he goes on to give the categories of which we are familiar, having heard about them so much.
Including religious freedom. The High Court recognized Rastafari as a protected religion. Rastafari groups can now cultivate and use cannabis for sacramental purposes at their registered places of assembly. The new laws also allow licensed individuals to possess limited amounts of cannabis, cultivate up to 5 plants, and smoke cannabis in designated public areas. Similar possession, cultivation, and smoking outside of designated smoking areas without a license are ticketable offenses.
None of what the Attorney General has described so far is untrue. The only issue is that the different things that he has spoken of so far are all scattered under different legislation. So the Rastafari rights legislation does not speak anything to 5 trees. That's a different regime, different circumstances. And he's not making any reference when he's speaking to them as to under what regime anybody could get protection or authority. And we're not hearing about and the office is located at. I just pointing out these things.
There are responsibilities for all individuals, licensed or otherwise, including restrictions on driving under the influence and selling without a license. Minors are prohibited from cultivation and use. Designated smoking areas are regulated by the chief medical officer, and a $500 ticket can be issued for smoking outside those areas. We then, on the website, dealt with the religious freedom of conscious cultivation, possession, and smoking. It is legal for a person who holds a license issued under the freedom of conscience.
No, you would think that this is providing more clarity because he's saying it will then move on. He has already conflated multiple different legislations in the first section. And now he's attempting to say that now he's going to move on. And what he's going to describe is going to apply with regards to religion and freedom of consciousness.
Cannabis Act to cultivate up to 5 cannabis plants in a secured area within their private premises, possess up to 56 grams/2 ounces of cannabis in certain public places, possess up to 15 grams, 0.5 ounces of cannabis resin in certain public places, and smoke cannabis or cannabis resin in areas designated for smoking pursuant to the Smoking Designated Areas Act. For example, the smoking area at the St. Kitts Music Festival, which is a designated area. Rastafari group cultivation, possession, and smoking. It is legal for an adult member of a Rastafari group holding a registration certificate issued under the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act 2023 to grow, harvest, dry, trim, cure, possess, and smoke cannabis as a sacrament for upliftment or edification at a registered place of assembly. It was always discussed with the Rastafari community that we cannot have just open use. Once the
One thing me gonna say from that, me not hear no limitation upon Rasta, you know. So me not understand how come Rasta not sign up under the regime because it's sound like them and make everything wild.
the area is registered under the legislation, no fee, just a form, then the groups will be able to do all of those things I just mentioned within that. And I can tell you, within the last couple of days, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 applications under the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act for places of worship to be registered under the legislation. Decriminalization of cultivation, possession, and smoking of cannabis. While it is no longer a criminal, jailable offense, a person who does not hold a license issued under the Freedom of Conscience Cannabis Act can receive a ticket if they cultivate up to 5 cannabis plants in a secured area within a private premises, that's a $50 ticket, possess up to 56 grams, 2 ounces of cannabis in certain public places, that's a $50 ticket, possess up to 15 grams, 0.5 ounces of cannabis in certain public places, $50 ticket, and smoke, vape cannabis or cannabis resin outside areas designated for smoking pursuant to the Smoking Designated Areas Act, $500 ticket. Madam Speaker, I'm sure on your way home, in the Connery area, you would see that the national...
Remember I tell her it's a legalization first. You see how it end up tobacco and the last thing is decriminalization. And that part there is also like, you know, they man could give you a ticket every day. From then they got a tree in your backyard. That ticket they basically mean, yeah. Nobody believe them man will give you one ticket, huh? That's an ongoing violation. Every time I see that, that's a violation. So you better pull that day.
National Drug Council has erected.
And is also so that you register under some kind some kind of regime, as I said. See, say, and that's good. I feel like this information is relevant. He also need to give more information, but you know this. There's no information and applications and person who have license under the freedom of consciousness. But yet we go here 11 Rastafari groups have recently applied. You see the logic?
A big sign to educate persons about not smoking unless it's in designated smoking areas, because there are lots of people in the Federation that have asthma, and smoke can also impact their health significantly. So to be fair to them, we ask bar owners, the music festival, to register with the chief medical officer, designate an area in that bar or in that restaurant or in that festival or party for smoking. And more than likely that will be down breeze, so that persons who wish to smoke can smoke comfortably. I have personally visited, myself and the member for number 1, during the music festival. We went into the area and had conversations with the persons, and there were some persons who said, listen, we're staying here the whole time to enjoy the music festival. We have a good view. We just want to smoke and relax and enjoy the company of our fellow smokers. And that has been so for the 2023 festival, 24, 25, and will probably be so for the 26 Music Festival. Now, in relation to responsibilities, Madam Speaker, because with all rights come responsibilities. Responsibilities of all persons cultivating, possessing, or smoking cannabis. No undertaking of any task under the influence of cannabis, if doing so would constitute negligence, professional malpractice, or professional misconduct. So if you work in a factory, if you're working in a construction site, where if you drop a block, it can break somebody's foot, you really should not be doing so under the influence of cannabis or any other substance. Then, no cultivation of cannabis unless in a secured area within a private residence, so as to prevent minors or persons vulnerable to substance abuse from accessing such plants or any other unauthorized access to such plants. So if you have your 5 plants in your yard and you live next to Washington Archibald High School,
Listen, I understand that to a degree. So let me ask you a question. Imagine you take your time and you plant over some banana, and people come all the time and then thief your banana. I be carrying a problem too. What about happy mango? The people who grow mango have a responsibility who grow the mango in a kind of way not to tempt people who thief their mango. No, listen. The reason why I say I understand is I do understand that you got to secure it from the youths. I get the part there, and I can't fight you. But I'm just trying to point out the limitations to this.
do not have your plants hanging over the front of your yard. Keep them in the back in a secured area where persons cannot see and they're not accessible to minors or persons who are vulnerable to drug abuse. Then, no person under the age of 18 shall cultivate, possess, or smoke cannabis. No selling of cannabis unless licensed to do so by the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. Now, the Medicinal Cannabis Authority is dealing with medicinal cannabis because research has shown that cannabis can be used for medicinal purposes for different types of ailments.
Well, based off of what he has said, there seems to be a category of persons who are left out. That the rest of them could get an exemption to grow by registering a here part there. The medicinal cannabis, under that you could get the ability also to go for those purposes. But I thought he had a freedom of conscience aspect And me not hear nothing about that part of it. Like so if and me say that because he's saying the only person who could sell is people who from the medicinal cannabis. And I think me hear that for the rest of them part. So the rest of them not supposed to make money neither. And how the freedom of consciousness people supposed to obtain? What's the source?
The Medicinal Cannabis Authority is open. It is now setting up. Setting up means it has to ensure that there are doctors that are trained to prescribe medicinal cannabis. Also, one of the key roles of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority is to ensure that the product that is being sold under the medicinal regime is of a certain quality such that it cannot cause harm to the person. So part of the facility and part of the reason why a Medicinal Cannabis Authority takes a while to set up is because they have to have the testing equipment. They have to have the testing equipment. Doctors have to be trained. They then have to have the capability of regulating the places where the prescriptions are granted, where the cannabis is sold, and that is in progress. So there should be no selling outside of that regime. And naturally, Madam Speaker, if you're buying a product that is regulated, you should be sure that you're getting something that will not cause you harm. Then no smoking of cannabis in a private residence that is used at any time to provide licensed child care.
Sorry, nearly get away with that part there. So basically all of them long talking the way he just do is to say they got to set up the way how they're gonna be making money out of this situation. No, I hear the training part and whatever. If he is alleging to us that there are doctors who are doing course about prescribing cannabis, well, tell me who one of them be now. Tell me who one of them be. And if you do it, I believe you're here.
Or other similar social service care during hours of operation. That is natural and reasonable. No driving while under the influence of cannabis. Now, this is also important, Madam Speaker. The law says you should not drive under the influence of alcohol. Similarly, you should not drive under the influence of any drug or cannabis. No possession or smoking of cannabis on a school bus, school premises, or at any private residence that is located within 300 feet of a school during regular hours of operation of the school. You should not be lighting up a spliff within 300 feet of school children walking by you. That seems reasonable as well, and that is part of the law. No smoking of cannabis outside designated smoking areas or at registered places of assembly.
So for point of reference, say you're there by fish and you light off, you're definitely in violation. Listen, really and truly, you might be in the net bar complex and be in violation of that. You might be in certain parts of the park and be in violation of that. And I feel like that's one of them to take serious. As I said, this is within schooling hours. That's the thing to keep in mind. But yeah, 300 feet.
Pursuant to the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act. No storing, handling, or otherwise keeping cannabis in such a manner as to allow minors or persons vulnerable to substance abuse to access the cannabis. If you are a parent in a home with a 5-year-old, you should not be keeping cannabis on your kitchen table. So potentially the child could take up the cannabis and maybe consume it, think it's something that they can eat. Or even a 13-year-old who can then access your cannabis, which you can lawfully participate in the privacy of your home, as the High Court has recognized is your freedom of conscience right.
Hey, how is that lawfully? But anyway, suppose we was to think about this scenario, right? But we was supposed to say, you go to all that, these precautions, but you gotta do it for alcohol. Do you feel like alcohol should have this level of precaution? You got to make sure that it is not somewhere where your child could get. Because realistically, if you look at how we deal with alcohol today, you know, go ahead if you're bad now. We forget about that part there.
And we have frequently, if you can scroll down to the frequently asked questions on the website, we have frequently asked questions. We have the debate from the National Assembly. We have all of the legislation there. So I encourage all persons to go to the website, which is cannabisclarityskn.com, to find out what are the do's and don'ts with respect to cannabis. And I want to end in this way, Madam Speaker. The reason why cannabis cannot be legalized in St. Kitts and Nevis is twofold. One, we are parties to treaties that do not allow non-medicinal, non-religious uses of cannabis. What that
Okay, you got to deal with the bullshit as it come. Even in the court said that is foolishness. No, don't tell me you can't legalize it because of a treaty. No, we ain't gonna do that. So it seemed like the AG come go hide behind that argument there. And to this, we would have to ask the question of, well, so how Canada get on it? Canada ain't party to the same treaty. There's a Commonwealth country, everything. What we doing? We're not trying to learn from and build on these relationships. It's just tourism with us be talking about.
means is that if we were to legalize, our corresponding banking relationships would almost come to an end. Cannabis has been decriminalized in many countries.
This come back to the global south thing. No, and this come back to the gold conversation that we had as well. So what we are seeing in the world is there's this economic warfare where basically they would say you can't do no banking. And so what they refer to as the global south is trying to seek to engage in trade amongst themselves without having to deal with the system as it currently is. So creating a subsystem, essentially. Understanding that from a population standpoint is the majority. But this treaty thing, and I wish it was you see, these things now, and you don't hear the same questions now from the media with regards to why we ain't stronger in this particular area. And maybe they're also gonna say is the correspondent banking. I need y'all to understand, okay? What he is suggesting is a violation of international law. You ain't supposed to just sanction. So that's not how this works. There are channels that you will go through and get these things ratified and get people behind you if you got a political will to do these things. That's not what's going on. This is unity remix.
It has, however, not been legalized in many countries because unless there is a universal
I'm going to say again, Canada, the country were above America, the one with Toronto in it, and Ontario and them type of places there, up there.
decision that all countries or most countries agree that it is no longer a substance which can cause harm, then now the income from it could be considered legal. However, we have to transact through international financial systems. There are corresponding banks in the US, there are corresponding banks in EU, there are corresponding banks in Asia. Most of those places, actually all of those places, cannabis is still illegal. So if you were to make money from cannabis in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those countries were, those banks were to realize that anybody in St. Kitts and Nevis could legally make money from cannabis, they would cut off our banking system from the international financing system, because it would be in essence us transferring money that was gotten from an illegal process, proceeds of crime. And then we would not be able to send money to our family members who are in school.
Listen, the AG has said a lot of words. I apologize every time I go hear him talk. I didn't dance the man at the beginning of this. I'm out. I've been out. He want to circle back and say, no, we can't use the money because it's money that was obtained illegally. No, originally, remember here tell you, we can't legalize it. No, what I am trying to tell you is this. If we legalize it, even if illegal in a them country, that not to see to nobody, That's not how this works. They do not get to determine what is legal or illegal in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that is what the judge was trying to say in the judgment and how this thing will go. So, we going on our own right now.
In the States, or family members who are in school in the UK, it would cause irreparable harm to our banking system. And that is why we've taken the structured approach, like many other responsible countries have done, which is to ensure that convictions were eliminated. So we rectified the past. We created the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act, which creates a regime after consultation with the Rastafari community to register their places of worship for free, such that they can participate in the sacrament in those places with full freedom and legality. There's a freedom of conscience regime where the court said anybody, adult in the privacy of their home, with the freedom of the
He
conscience,
created a regime. Up to
use the
now,
substance
all
and
he
do
could
so.
tell you
There's
is
a process for registration as
he,
well.
11
There's
Rastafarian
also
groups
the
don't
medicinal
apply
cannabis regime. So I
and
encourage
can't tell
everyone
you
who
or no other
is
regime
confused or believes in
applications
wants
and
more
people are
information
like,
about how cannabis works and the laws work, to go
let
to
me
the
tell you
regime
long.
that I mentioned, which was carefully
So
crafted
this is blah, 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 blah,
by
blah, blah.
experts
We don't hear the meat of what he had to say.
themselves, and everyone
And this is from recently. And this is also the, Banky, the man now go sell with you. None of this in das what Banky deal with. This is to kind of reframe. I mean, I really got to hear that yapping, yeah. Fine, with it, 248.
Speaker, with your leave, I rise to make a few comments
248. Okay, we're going to Dr. John.
by ministers. Having many ministries under my portfolio, I think it's time that I update as I usually seek to do. I want to thank my fellow ministers who have so far, so in an erudite way, a succinct way, would have updated our people with respect to the achievements of their ministries and the work that they have been doing. I was very, very happy to hear that report from the minister with responsibility for economic development, investments, etc. That really shows how our strategies or overarching strategy to ensure continued economic development that is bearing fruit and building the resilience.
Yeah, but I just been going to say, in case you know been here, no, why be Jew say so far, you know miss nothing you hear. We not really studied that part there. No, when I come back here, no, we on be pan cannabis.
Spoke about the issue of cannabis here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and he went through the aspects of the legislation. But I want to also deal with the aspects of it that may not be directly related or not focused.
I got to read this here now. People here in cannabis industry, but the government is saying medicinal cannabis industry. This is very important to point out. And I need more people on this side of recreational. My argument has always been the music festival argument, the carnival argument, the cultural argument. I talking about what is the rule for you when you're down on the beach, when you're there by a bar, when you're in a social setting. This is what needs to be locked down and explained fully. And just like how we talk about the medicinal and they could talk about um people have applied the Rastafari them, we need to hear what's going on. They are masking it by saying freedom of conscience. And Jeffrey Hanley need to stop skating. He need to take off his glasses them and answer a question. Government in it for the money to export. Listen, right? If you ain't paying attention closely to what is going on with cannabis, let me explain to exactly what's going on right now. I keep on hearing about different angles, and let me explain to what's going on. All of these politicians, from a political perspective, is what you call conservative, okay? Even Labor ain't live up to the name. That's a conservative party. And when you're conservative, you like things the way how they've always been. They don't want anything to change. They are not interested in making money. When it comes to this issue, they are concerned with shedding water. They want bang water, bang water, bang water, frustrate people and do all kind of thing. And then they're hoping for some kind of new science to come around and then say, but we're going to take it back. But there is no genuine interest with regards to giving any assistance to people with regards to making no money. People are talking about they want to make money for themselves. No, if they want to make money for themselves, how long now we hearing about this thing? You ain't think they would have, that man would have done had the thing going, and we would have done here about the exports them. Even if ain't make news down here, it would have filtered back out on the back end where they're going. We would have hear some kind of thing. Who say bad is a new source of cannabis down in, I think it's in Nevis. And they've been supplying this potent, this, and you would have hear the headlines, man. You know what I'm saying? So this ain't real. That's another aspect where people go get in touch with. Ain't nothing about the trying to make money for themselves. This is fully done incompetence. None of these people just try to reach out to anybody who within the scheme. They just gain off this thing kind of blindly. and they're talking to the community and not the communities in order to ascertain what is going on. And this is not even putting them up in a position to get out, you know, this thing to the fullest potential.
But to take it from a different perspective, it was this administration that took the decision that Rastafarians in this country should have the rights that other persons of conscience or other persons of faith or other religious groupings have. It is written in our constitution.
This is false. That decision was rendered by the Supreme Court in the Sankofa case. Rastafari fight for that. Ain't nobody give that to Rasta. And the government, the government came up with a legislation which essentially formalized it, but it's not the government that did that. So I ain't with that part there. But you want Rasta man votes. I hear you. Lock them up and then still want the votes.
Madam Speaker. But we took a step to recognize Rastafarianism as a religion in St. Kitts and Nevis, as a faith practice, or what the members who practice it prefer to call it a way of life, a faith-based way of life. Madam Speaker, first in the Caribbean, that we have taken such significant steps.
See, one thing that we got to be aware of in our life, right? The first to do something is not necessarily like no important thing, you know. It is who come along and do this thing better. Who really put in the work. Sometimes you do something first and somebody end up take your recipe and end up do the recipe better than you. All of a sudden the recipe name after them, not you. What you could do? This thing is not about force. This thing is about creating effective systems who are going to go to the upliftment of the people and them at all moments in time.
In recognizing this community, because they should be recognized, Madam Speaker. When you look around St. Kitts and Nevis, everybody knows somebody who is a Rasta. My mother is a Rasta, and I can bet everybody in here almost have some family member, if not close, distant, who is a Rasta in their family. It is part of our culture, and they should have the rights like everyone else. This administration took those bold steps, Madam Speaker, to ensure that the Constitution is abided by and the Rastafari community can benefit from the rights enshrined, the protections enshrined in our Constitution, just like anyone else who practice a different faith. Madam Speaker, I want that to be placed on record, because now I'm seeing that those who had the opportunity to do it and did not do it, many of whom might grandstand at this particular time. I remember a member of this parliament who made fun and trivialized the practice of the Rastafari religion. I'm not going to get into it today, but we can remember when a member of this parliament talk about how they smoke it and they blow up in the air and say, "Jah Rastafari," making fun of those who practice the religion or the faith-based way of life and not giving them their due respect. You might disagree with them, but respect is due. And so now I see people standing and saying all sorts of things now that we have lifted the heavy load of declaring that Rastafarianism should be a recognized religion or faith.
Okay, may I go try something now? May I go try something? May I go try kick up a little storm within St. Kitts and Nevis now? Rastafarians, Alan Powell tell you, Singis and Nevis government, Labour government, ain't give you no rights as no Rasta man. If you want to say anybody, you say Sankofa. Sankofa suffer that, and Sankofa win his case, and the High Court gave that. Once again, me not say that the government ain't formalize it within a legislation. But what you want to tell me? So between 2019 when Sankofa win and 2023 in a religion, when this thing get recognized, and once again it wasn't given, it was earned, it was fought for, and to the victory got the spoils. So Labour ain't supposed to get to come in on the back end. And Rasta supposed to meet Labour politicians, and Dr. Joe in particular, and let he to know Labour ain't give them no rights as Rasta man. He ain't give you no rights. That's the stand what I want to kick up. Me ain't believe that that's legit. And Rasta supposed to hear me and feel where me I come from. But we shall see.
Faith-based practice here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Speaker, having that philosophical foundation that is based on the protections of our Constitution, we then came to Parliament and the AG has spoken about what we have done. Madam Speaker, we don't want to see people from the Rastafari community getting locked up for practicing their faith. That is why we took meticulous time in visiting their areas of worship, having discussions with them so that we could have come to the conclusion of a bill that would not be a bill pushed on them, but a bill that came to Parliament, a bill that they participated in, so that when it is passed, it would have, of course, their direct input, Madam Speaker. That took place. And that bill says that, in agreement with the community, that the areas of worship can go to the Ministry of Faith-Based and Ecclesiastical Affairs and register that place of worship. And those who are associated with that place of worship, they too will be protected so that they don't have to run and hide like they used to under the former administration to practice their religion or their way of life. Madam Speaker, that is critically important that we understand what this has done. Madam Speaker, they can go freely and practice, they can practice in their homes. And we ask that it be done, of course, respectfully, which they have consented to, and which they have abided with, and they themselves understand how to conduct themselves with their sacrament. And so for people to
See, no, Dr. Joe and Dr. Joe, no. We would expect Dr. Joe at least to do this. Shocking that the AG would do this, but Dr. Joe, we would expect that. But Dr. Joe now want to say, we even do it so that they could do it in their home and they could control the sacrament. When you read the Rastafari Religion Act, it talking about smoking at the place of worship. Yeah? So is now the place of worship your home? It's just conflating in terms of there never should have been no limit on where you could go home, in my estimation. When you're home, you're home. That should have been the law.
grandstand and act like nothing was done, we are the one who took the revolutionary steps to make sure that in this country that Rastafarians are not locked up for using the cannabis as part of their sacrament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, however, it must be noted that there has to be rules and laws governing how this is done. And I will speak from a medicinal.
Isn't Labour a previous government? I swear this guy forgets Labour was in for years. This is the guy who said recently the fuel of the gas is going up, eh? So as I said, we expect this from the Prime Minister.
Standpoint. There are two medical doctors in this parliament, and both of whom happen to be on this side. Madam Speaker, we now have what you call the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. Because as was explained, St. Kitts and Nevis cannot declare that cannabis is legal. I want to spend a few minutes on that. If you declare that today, if I say that today, I can guarantee you that by the end of the week, banks will be writing us saying that our correspondence banking is at risk. What does that mean? Big word to say that the banks in the US will not do transaction with us, the banks in the EU will not do banking with us, and other banks will not do banking with us. If they stop doing banking with us, what do you think would happen in St. Kitts and Nevis? It wouldn't take long for the economy to crash. I want us to understand that very clearly. Why is it we have to make sure that the laws are in place? The correspondence banking is crucially important, critically important, vitally important for St. Kitts and Nevis's economy to continue to function. Losing correspondence banking, your economy would crash, Madam Speaker. There are other countries who might sustain that because they're not small, open economies. And so they can sustain it. But a small, open economy like St. Kitts and Nevis would crash. And that is why I want to say to those who are entering into this to make sure that they follow the laws and that St. Kitts and Nevis is seen as a country that follow the laws when it comes to the issue of cannabis, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, is a serious matter, a critical matter, and we cannot put our correspondence banking and our financial sector at risk. And therefore, we're asking those who are interested in this to follow the laws carefully, Madam Speaker. So that is the first thing I want to put forward, that these laws are there to ensure that at no point anybody gets the idea that we have legalized cannabis and therefore we are collecting money through this and they would put our correspondence banking at risk. What will I say to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis? Madam Speaker, sometimes things are not perfect, and you would prefer there are something else. But when you look at the consequences, how can we sustain those consequences? We can't. Can you imagine that hotels can't transact? Can you imagine that cruise ship can't transact? Can you imagine that TDC can't transact? Can you imagine that Horsfords can't? Can you imagine the small people who have the small businesses can't? What would I say to them? I think they would look to us as fools and say,
If you listen to just that little part of the speech, that this is what me I try to tell you. Labour ain't no Labour Party. You hear how much of people he talk about before he reached to the workers? The original Labour was, and he want to tell you about this business, that business, them executive there, and all them people there, and then he say, and what about the small man? Labour is more like Pam than they ever been in their life. And Pam ain't realize what going on and thief Labour vibes. That's what I see taking place in this scenario. But that's a different conversation.
how can you make such a silly decision that would crush the economy and crush us as people? And therefore, Madam Speaker, we are being responsible with how we introduce cannabis as part.
They are not being responsible. They are being cowed. There is years now. Is nearly a whole term, and you're only getting one of them. So, going, and you ain't do nothing. So there is no circumstance here whereby you are doing something special at this moment in time.
Of our way of life here in St. Kitts and Nevis. It has to be done responsibly. The law is clear, and the AG gives the legislation, Madam Speaker. And for
Just to show you how full of shit the AG and the Prime Minister be. I realize that they say we are signatory to these treaties, and them can't name any of the treaties that we are signatory to that are preventing us from doing what we want, and I think it's a Nevis. And you notice now the Prime Minister is someone like, is it a banking treaty? Is there some kind of banking treaty? What we're saying up and what that specifically said that we can legalize what we want. And I keep on asking, what happened to Canada? I'm even trying to Google this thing right now. We'll see if Canada lose correspondence banking.
those who are engaging, we want you to engage responsibly so that all of us are protected and you can have the benefit, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the third point. The first point, this administration is the administration that did it. The second point, the law is set up to make sure that we protect our correspondence banking. And now the next point that I'm going to make is the point of protection of people's health. The AG touched one aspect of health protection, which is people should not smoke in public spaces. It doesn't matter what you smoke. This is not speaking to cannabis alone. You shouldn't be smoking tobacco just in the open like that. You should not be smoking any type of bush, paper, just in the open like that. It is not speaking to cannabis alone, Madam Speaker. It is just speaking to smoking specifically. If you have your cannabis and you're not smoking it and you're allowed to carry it, there's no problem. Cigarette in St. Kitts and Nevis, tobacco is legal in St. Kitts and Nevis, but still you should not be smoking it in public. Why? Madam Speaker, there are people who suffer from respiratory ailments. You don't know if there's an asthmatic standing behind you. You don't know. And if you are smoking in public and not given the protection that we should give, and you are smoking in public and somebody inhales that and get a serious asthma attack, that, of course, then questions would be asked. Why wasn't there laws to protect those who use the public spaces and might be allergic to smoke? That is how serious this matter is, Madam Speaker. Because when you smoke goes all over. It is different to if you drink a beer. If you drink a beer, you aren't consuming it. But then again, we're going to tell you, you cannot drink beer until you are drunk and drive. Even though alcohol is legal, it is still regulated, Madam Speaker, regulated so that you are not drinking and driving and putting other people's lives at risk. Again, Madam Speaker, the law has to be clear. While you are allowed to use, we still have to make sure that people are protected. And so, Madam Speaker, that is why we say smoking. So smoking is not targeting cannabis in any way. It is targeting smoking, period. Madam Speaker, the other aspect to health is this. You have what you call a medicinal cannabis authority. Because in this country, we recognize as well that cannabis has medicinal uses. It can be used to treat certain ailments. Madam Speaker, somebody is not just supposed to grow something and say, I'm going to sell it because it is a medicinal plant. If you want to do that for your personal responsibility under the act that allow you to have a few plants, you do that for you. But at no point you are supposed to be offering your product to the general public if you don't have a license and the necessary surveillance of it is in place. Let me tell you why, Madam Speaker. There's medication being sold in the drugstore. For you to bring in a medication, let's say one for high blood pressure, that comes under an authority, a law. We have to ensure that when they say they're ordering this medication, that it is the medication.
I should right now be here in silence. I know that Dr. J is talking, but we're gonna move on from here because here yeah be long story right now. I really thought it was slightly more captivating. But in general, you regardless of any words maybe you hear from them or even from me, them would tell you believe them, you know. Me gonna tell you don't believe me, you know. But look at the actions what the government has taken since Sankofa case in 2019, and you tell me if you see serious people in any one of the government and them about the cannabis industry. You tell me who on either government side is the lead man who out there and could answer all questions with regards to the cannabis industry. All that the Prime Minister is saying was highlighted in Sankofa case, and those arguments were listened to. But it was pointed out that those issues do not supersede the Constitution. Everything where be them a point out, they don't lose pan. And they still a come back with the same old argument. That's how come me try to tell you whether it's unity, and by the way, you can't let anyway, you can't let unity fool you. Member Sankofa bring the case against unity government, you know. That's why me try to say don't let nobody tell you that they only want to make money for themselves. If they want to make money for themselves, they would have done set it up and sell it off. They can't even do that. And they ain't want to talk to nobody to find out what really need to take place. But anyway, we going to the court.
That what we've seen played out recently of CARICOM leaders shouting at each other across the Caribbean Sea, that will be quelled, and that what we would have is a disciplined approach to dealing with the United States and others as a Caribbean community. And so I'm hopeful, whether through Carla Barnett, the Secretary General, or through the chair, Prime Minister Drew, that there will be clarity of expression, clarity of thought, and clarity of purpose. But whatever we do, I think we need to articulate the view that we stand together as the Caribbean. And I believe that Secretary of State Rubio should leave with a clear understanding that the Caribbean is united.
Okay, two things I want to say. In case Sankofa issues were not addressing medicinal cannabis, they have opted to focus on medicinal cannabis while stifling the issues Sankofa took them to court for. You are not wrong. You are not incorrect. I'll be done been past the part of the premiere there. So let me go forward a little bit more.
You know, the 2000,
Yeah, and in case the premiere sound kind of soft, he also sound kind of soft for me. I don't know why. If he trying to sound sexy or something, I don't know what's going on with the audio. I don't know if the prime minister is just more commanding than him. So when he speak, he voice echo to the room more. I don't know. I'm just letting you know. So in case it's sound kind of soft, yeah, I don't know what to do with regards to this aspect.
if I were in RP, I would never mention 2011. because it's the first time in history that you had a candidate declared null and void for electoral fraud. I would not mention that it was a dark day in the history of politics and our democracy. So you would have one in 1987, 1989, and again in 2006. That's been it in the last, since 1992. Right? So that 1992 till now is 8 and 26, 34 years. 34 years, 18 elections. So I think the people of Nevis, 14 out of 18, 3 to NRP, 14 to CCM, and 1, which was null and void. So as we like to say, 14 to 3 is murder. You know, you know. I mean, I would have just, I don't know why you all don't pack up and just get a new name and new people and new everything, because I don't know. Some people just love to lose. Any more questions for me, Ms. Hewlett, that are not about coalition?
Getting away as far from that as possible.
Yes.
Elke Hewlett, Department of Information again, sorry. You said recently in an op-ed, and I quote, our Caribbean region must be concerned at the lack of guidance emanating from regional leadership and from regional organizations such as the Caribbean Community, which is CARICOM, on what now seems to be an undeniable shift away from the international rules-based order. You also said that we need to, sorry, I had it marked here. Okay, so basically you said that we must forge new relationships and develop new norms among ourselves, even as we seek to develop new relationships and new norms with the great and the middle powers. Can you explain the rationale behind those comments? Thanks.
So those comments, Ms. Hewlett, were framed in a broader context. We had a speech from Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney.
We had already spoken about Marconi and his speech in Davos this night, that the Premier is up to date on that aspect of the situation. We're going to go a little further, and you want, okay, beyond. So we're going to go a little further. Then question, they ain't really of no interest to the moment, but the Premier, as many politicians as possible need to wake up to the reality that the world has changed. So no tell me nothing about no certain institution. We will be moving forward.
If the herd is together, they are less able to penetrate that. But once they get one isolated and they pick them off one by one, and we have to learn from that. And as I said, if there's one thing that comes out of CARICOM, St. Kitts Nevis, is that CARICOM is united and together. We as the Caribbean civilization may not always agree with what our leaders say and do, but let them be united and together. And that is my ask of them. Anything further for me, ladies and gentlemen?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bjorn Hollock Handley, and I am a YouTube content creator. I react to Caribbean news, and I do travel videos. The name of my channels are Beyond Uncut and Beyond Travel. Mr. Brantley, you said this morning that you sent the Destiny document to the Prime Minister on the 23rd of December. Well, the Prime Minister said he didn't receive it until the 29th of January. That's more than a month after it would have been sent. And then after that,
No, I hope I realize. You see how clear I because here Bian? You hear how Bian is speaking in a commanding manner and speaking so everybody go hear? And then and then the sexy man can't talk so because here he want to whisper to people. I mean, I don't know what's going on.
we see these committees that is being installed by the Prime Minister. We have a committee now for the SSZ. I know that all the members are from St. Kitts. Nobody is from Nevis on that committee. Now you are telling us there's another committee for Destiny. And you would have noted today that the members have not yet been installed.
No. Just to correct the record. I thought the question was about the advisory committee in Nevis, the oversight committee in Nevis.
Yes.
That's the committee I said the members have not been installed.
Okay.
I don't know anything about this committee in St. Kitts.
Okay.
So I don't know if members of over there have already been.
This is malpractice. You cannot be you cannot be the premier in Nevis and not know everything what going on. It is too important. You yourself will tell Abby the importance of the destiny and how this approval need to be going. Me, listen. I am not supposed to know who the members are before the premier. That's it. That's irresponsible.
Installed. I have no idea.
Yes. We heard about the committee, but we have no idea who these members are.
No.
Apparently, you do not have any idea who they are as well.
Not.
So, first we saw a delay in a month, the document being received more than a month after. Now, a number of committees put in place now to further delay the process. I find it fascinating that you mentioned the constitutional crisis that we have in St. Kitts and Nevis between both islands. There's no committee for that. We have an electoral crisis in the country where a number of dead people are on the list still, and a number of issues. There's no committee put in place for that. But all of a sudden, we have these two committees put in place where nobody even know who the members are. My question is there a time frame that you're going to give the Prime Minister to sign, or can this go on indefinitely? Because I understand that information is coming to me that the Prime Minister is looking to sign the document or don't sign it after the next federal election. So that document can be in St. Kitts for a long, long time. Do you have a time frame? Are we looking before Culturama, before Christmas? Do you have a time in line for the Prime Minister to sign this document? And just going to ask a final question here. I know that an official from the government of Tobago, who is not in the federal government of Trinidad and Tobago, was invited to St. Kitts to sit with Trinidad and Tobago, to sit in the meetings and so. You know today that you are the head of government in Nevis, and you are the leader of the opposition, yet you were just invited to an ordinary opening ceremony and not to sit with the head of states. You mentioned a few ideas that you have. I'm sure you would like to mention them with these head of states down there in St. Kitts, and not just at this press conference here. The leader of the NRP, Janice Daniel Hodge, said she was not invited to any high-level meetings as well. So again, nobody from Nevis invited down there to St. Kitts to sit in an important CARICOM meeting when we have the chairman of CARICOM, who is the Prime Minister of St. Kitts. What are your thoughts on that? It's not looking too good for Nevis. What are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you much, Mr. Hanley, for your questions. You say that these committees have been put in place, and you reference that there was what you call a constitutional crisis. I don't agree that we have a crisis. And in fact, if you're careful, they'll tell you they're from Sandy Point. Right? So you are not getting, and it's not being mainstreamed in us, that we are one. I saw a large group down at on the beach the other night, and the chap said to me, "Man, we've come over to your country to have a good time tonight, to have some drinks." Large group of people hanging out. And I said, "No, it's your country. You mean you've come to this part of your country?" So, as I said, I really don't think it's malicious. I just feel that it is the way it is. It is the way it has always been. And, we have to find a way. We have to find a way, because this issue of Nevis being an afterthought, when I became foreign minister, it was the first time in the history of foreign affairs that Nevisians were allowed to participate at the level of ambassadors and things of that nature. Why? Because we're not going to school? We don't have degrees. Absolutely, we have the capacity and the ability here. When I reach out to people like former High Commissioner Sherry Truss, Dr. Everson Hull, Elsan Brister. You know, you reach out to people, Eustace Wallace, competent, knowledgeable, and you said, listen, we want you to serve the country. When prior to that, if it looks like there was just a rule that you had to be from St. Kitts. So I'm saying that these things need to change. They really do need to change. And I am not attributing blame. I am simply saying that that just seems to be how the country has operated over the years. And that needs to stop. So I am optimistic that going forward, we will do a better job of making sure that there's balance, there's inclusion, and it's like, just as you've said, these committees that the Prime Minister is putting in place. How are you going to put a committee in place to review a program, a project in Nevis, and nobody from Nevis on this committee? Committee members don't even know where the area in Nevis is.
Let's see. Let me come back. So the fact that the premier is saying that and ain't gonna committee members from Nevis means that the premier really is not aware who is on this committee. And this is what I'm saying. This is malpractice. The premier is spending too much of time off on Nevis and not enough time sending out his emissaries and his spies. Where's the spies, man? You can't just spend all your spies them on NRP. You need to get PAM spies, you need to get Labour spies, you need to get PLP spies. That's the business. That's the game. Your game is information, and you got to know what's going on. Because when you got information, that's the best way you could represent the people. Because nobody gonna pull out no card that you ain't aware of. As I saying, if you want to be a minister, part of your job as being a minister is to be fast. Because you go know what's going on in your community. Politics is local. You can't pull about this, man.
They tell them come South Coast, they have no idea what the South Coast and Nevis look like. And again, it may not be something that is ill will, but just that is the traditional thinking, right? You think I could put a committee in place in Nevis to review Christopher Harbour? I mean, people in Singers will laugh me to scorn. So we need to confront these things, not in a hostile way or in any aggressive way, but we need to really discuss these things and say, listen, to get this country to a space where everybody's contributing, you really do need it to start with us who are in leadership. Say, listen, we must include the entire country. Yes, Ms. Budgeon?
Shimika Budgeon, Von Radio once more. Mr. Premier, I know that you spoke this morning about the film festival, which falls under tourism. But are there any new or additional initiatives to boost tourism on Nevis, and how will they impact local businesses? It's a new year, first quarter to be exact. So what can we expect? And are there any locals or asylum seekers that were already deported to the Federation from the United States? If so, can you present any figures, or when will they be expected to start arriving? That's it for me. Thank you.
Budgeon, you have a way of asking me questions. You're in the wrong press conference, you know. Some of these questions you should ask of the Prime Minister and Minister of National Security. I wouldn't know, for example, if people are coming back, because that doesn't come through me at all. It doesn't involve me at all. They land at RLB. All I would know is if they show up in Nevis, maybe I find out, because otherwise than that, there's really no mechanism because of the matter of national security that lies with the Prime Minister. So, not we have in-house meetings, but not on security matters like this, where I would be told that X number of persons have come back or Y number of people have come back. That is not the case. So I don't get that information. And as I said, sometimes I think the press asks me these questions, but these are not questions within my remit.
So this is like so simple. Every time you write matters in Christopher and Nevis, whether you're resident or come from foreign, you have to put on where are you staying within the federation. That's it. That's all. Um, we understand that people could come sing it, and we don't know if they get to visit Nevis. But the one certain way to determine this thing is which part they must stay. So, the, and why wouldn't you request this? How would it be a breach of national security not to specifically single out somebody and say, I want to know where that person they say, but to generally say, well, this is the amount of people who came in and this was the amount of people who said they're staying in Nevis. That's it. That's all.
It is not within my wheelhouse. So those are matters that really are for the Prime Minister as Minister of National Security, and the short answer is I don't know. I really can't tell you how many, if some have come, and if so, how many. I just don't know. New initiatives for tourism. We have done this Winter Reimagine campaign that I think is still running. We have actually seen some pretty good pickup thus far in terms of travel. I think we are assisted, Ms. Budgeon, because it's been a particularly cold winter. I'm told just a few days ago that New York and all those areas were snowed in. So I know my friends and family listening in the U.S. and the large diaspora we have, they don't like to hear it, but when the snowstorms come there, I think that's good for us because people are minded to fly to get away from it. So long may it snow in America. So longer winters, they are of value to us in terms of people coming home. But the numbers so far, and I just shared some of the numbers from the tax side, which is always a good indicator of business because, you know, that's a tax on actual business. So I think that's useful. And then we've had some numbers that we have got from the NTA because, and let me commend them. Forgive me, but I should say that it's the first time that we are actually getting hard numbers of visitors coming in. We know that the numbers have been available, but in the past we have not really been able to get it. But through collaboration between the NTA and the SKTA, we know that, for example, we had 3,200 what we call true visitor arrivals in December into Nevis. Why we say true? Because, you know, when they fill out the online form, you traveled recently to come back in? Okay, if you did, to come back in now, you have to go online and you put in all your information. So by the time you reach here, they already know that Ms. Budgeon is coming and she's a national of it. And one of the questions they ask, are you going to Nevis or Sinkits? So you're able to get, and they drill down even further because they ask you, do you have your own home, you know, guest house, hotel, villa, etc. So we had 3,200 heads and beds that came to Nevis in December of 2025. And so what I'm going to try to do is to try to provide those numbers on a more regular basis to the press. Any other questions for me, ladies and gentlemen?
Good day, Mr. Premier. Elke Hewlett, Department of Information again. Speaking on accepting those non-national deportees and refugees from the U.S.,
Yes.
what is the NIA's stance on taking such persons into Nevis? So basically, can the federal government dictate that Nevis accept any such persons, in your opinion? Also, oil prices have hit 7-month highs as tensions rise between the U.S. and Iran. What is the implication for the NIA and the Nevis electricity company, Nevelec, especially in relation to the ongoing reprieve from fuel surcharge that residential consumers presently enjoy, and likewise the cap on fuel surcharge for commercial consumers? Thank you.
Ms. Hewlett, thank you for your questions. Deportees, can Nevis refuse? The short answer is no, because again, once somebody lands in St. Kitts, they're in the Federation. And so, if we were to take
Now the deported part I want to hear. I want to hear what's going on with the next part. What going on with Nevis? What's going on with the cost of living? And by you know what I'm gonna do by the way. You know what I'm gonna do by the way. Let me come up on the camera. Let me come up on the camera and express to I that there's something else will happen. NRP. I see the NRP had a town hall, I would say. Now, here's some things I observed about NRP. When the origin of town hall was to bring in the people so that the people them could have a voice. When you have any circumstance like that and the politicians that are more than the people, is a problem. It's my first. That's observation number one. Second thing is, seem like NRP decide that this thing gonna be a SSZ. Well, me I say me on the screen, But anyway, it seemed like NRP decide that this thing gonna be a SSZ. I feel they're gonna come and they wanna talk about the SSZ, okay? I feel like there was opportunities to speak about the cost of living and certain situations that affecting the majority of people. Things that could bring in people and not have it be just the SSZ. For me, the attendance at this show me what's going on with this SSZ thing. This is an elite argument for the most part and is not touching on the common man. The common man want to know what's going on with energy prices, with food prices, cost of living. That's my estimation. But I was disappointed in the NRP town hall. My perspective.
because if those 10,000 people, and please, this is me being facetious in terms of a number, but if those 10,000 people were to jump on the boat and come to Nevis, the question would be now, what is Nevis's carrying capacity? Do we have housing available? Do we have jobs available? Can our hospital handle it? All of those are important questions, but none of those questions were asked of Nevis when the agreement was made with the United States. And so I go back to the point that I'm making, that the country is not just St. Kitts, the country is St. Kitts and Nevis. And there are certain decisions when made will impact Nevis. So when people come, you have right now a situation where OECS nationals are coming to Nevis in large numbers, seeking employment and to be here. And I welcome them. But the Premier of Nevis has zero control over that. There's nothing that Nevis can do. Let us say, for example, we say, well, we have a job shortage in Nevis or we have a housing crisis in Nevis. There's nothing that we can do. So the only way that this works properly is for Bastia to coordinate, to say, hey, Premier, we are considering this. What is Nevis's position in terms of can you take 10, 50, 100? Bearing in mind that all may end up in Nevis. Nevis nice, as I say. So people land and people come. There's nothing that we can do on Nevis to stop it because that is the nature of the current situation. Oil prices high, Ms. Hewlett, you're asking a question that keeps me up at nights because every time there are conflicts in these areas, and for whatever reason it looks like conflict and oil go hand in hand. Whenever there are conflicts in this region, our people pay the price. And oil prices, there are other prices that take time, but oil prices is almost immediate that you get the impact of that price increase. You're right that currently the NIA shields the public from the fuel surcharge. We don't charge it on households, and we cap it for businesses. And even so, electricity is still high. That's one of the biggest complaints we get, is the cost of electricity, small businesses and for individuals. So this is something that we will have to look at to determine what we do, how.
Just a slight correction by what the Premier just said, talking about oil is one of the things where you get the the prices going up immediately. I'm not denying for you that the prices have gone up. I'm just trying to let you know it ain't necessarily stop rising. And you don't actually start to feel the effect until the time it would take for the shipment to get to you. So essentially the Middle East oil would have done get to its destinations now. So we're starting to kind of live in that market. And when you see what's going on, you see rationing in certain places. And it's what? Nearly $20 at the pump right now in SKN.
Much more we can carry in terms of the pressure that it puts on the resources of the NIA. There are many times I think that the NIA could be in a surplus position in terms of its budget, but it has to be subsidizing electricity to shield our people from the full impact. It also, though, Ms. Hewlett, emphasizes why we have to move to renewables at a much faster pace. So that really, at the end of the day, is the only complete answer, is for us to get this.
I don't know why this man meek, or why don't be meek on my right now and can't speak up. We could hear everybody speak. The next thing what I want to tell people is Dr. G is going to make a speech tomorrow. He's going to say a lot of words. He's going to announce certain things with regards to the fuel surcharge. And he going to mix it in with some kind of measures what they have for relief. But it's mostly relying on that them man ain't going to be able to lift up the fuel surcharge. If you're following what is going on anywhere at this time, you know that there was an attempted ceasefire. I think it has already broken down. And now we're in blockade settings. So this is really gonna be a protracted. Maybe the hot part is over, but it still remains to be seen whether or not any products are getting in. Additionally, have to bear in mind all the time, this is not just gas. This is the byproducts of gas. So flights are gonna get expensive. Cause they don't make jet fuel from this thing, and then other products, plastics, dyes, fertilizers. So it's on a wide spectrum.
Geothermal out of the ground, get more solar, get more renewables, because that's the only thing that's going to insulate us from war in Iran and war in Iraq and war in Venezuela and war everywhere else that is oil producing. Any other questions for me?
Just quickly, Mr. Premier, you mentioned earlier about the proceeds from the Citizenship Investment Program, that is not as vibrant as it once was. What's the future for that as it relates to Nevis? Previously, I would have asked you about projects that would have started under the CBI that have stalled. What's the government's plan for those projects? Are you going to look to get other investors to take over those projects, sell the buildings, destroy them? What's the plan? And what's the future for CBI for Nevis, especially in light of the Destiny project looming?
Mr. Huey, CBI, I think, will continue to play a role in our economy. In fact, I would hope that it continues to play a role. I just think that we need to recalibrate our expectations. It will not continue to play the role that it has been playing, which is really a dominant role. I think it will now be a contributor, but just one of many, and that is why there's a need for us to find other contributors to ensure that we can achieve our sustainable development goals and we can have our people having a good quality of life. So I don't see CBI disappearing entirely. What I am commenting on is the demise of CBI as it currently stands. That is, the years when it was giving us 55 and plus % of our budget. Those years, I believe, are done. They're gone. So we now need to recalibrate, because if you move from 55% and you now move into 5 or 10%, that 5 or 10% is still important, but you now have a significant gap that you must fill. And that is why, see, certainly from a Nevis perspective, we're pushing geothermal, we're pushing Destiny, we're pushing film industry, we're pushing online gaming. We're trying to create new industries and new streams of revenue, because we recognize that what CBI did in the past, it will no longer.
To how NRB kind of not pay attention to something, right? This man talking about the film industry. What legislation right now is the film industry going under? What authority they going under? Could somebody ask this question at any moment in time? How much money they're making? Who is overseeing them? And me not just talking about who is overseeing them, as in like who in charge. Who is the minister responsible? How this year go?
Be able to do going forward. So that is my short answer in relation to that, and I think that for me, I have been on a particular quest for diversification. I've been very clear about that in saying that we need to move at pace to diversify the economy. We used to be dependent on sugar. When that died, we went to tourism, and then CBI exploded, and we forgot everything else and focused on CBI. And now that is having difficulties. We really don't have much to fall back on in terms of alternatives. And that's because, in my opinion, we have not planned it properly over the years. Even the CBI receipts, the IMF has been talking about a sovereign wealth fund now, going back to, I think, 2013. When you had hundreds of millions of dollars flowing in, one would have thought that that would have been the appropriate time to set up a sovereign wealth fund. I've now seen the federal government propose a sovereign wealth fund. I'm wondering where the wealth is going to come from for that fund. Because the CBI monies, well, the expression I was saying is poof. CBI monies have been poofed away. I mean, they tell me you're getting $5+ billion in revenue in the last several years, and Sinki's people still catching water in bucket. How make that make sense to me? Make it make sense. You're still renting, generating sets at Skellek. You still have basic infrastructure not in place, with over $5 billion in revenue. So, I like to, listen, I take the blows, Mr. Huey, so when I get a chance to stand up and take the credit, I'm going to take the credit too, because water flowing, busting pipe in Nevis, right? We have electricity, we have water, we have roads, we invested. And I want to make that point, because from the paltry sum that we got, when the analysis was done, Nevis got 8% of the money. 8. Sinkers kept 92. But Nevis have water, electricity, roads, water taxi pier, new police station, CCTV coverage, CCTV command center. You go around, what am I missing? You call them up, Mondo Truck, new treasury building in town. From 8%. You keep 92 and people catching water in bucket. Makes no sense. And these are, to my mind, sometimes depress y'all let the fellas in Sinkis off easy, Y'all will come for me hard, but Sinkis fellas will get off easy, because y'all need to ask them those kinds of questions. Where has $5 billion gone? Right? Where has $5 billion gone? So, but anyway, on that note, I want to commend the federal government. I think today they're commissioning the desalination plant to try and ameliorate some of the problems that they're having in Sinkers in terms of water. But if I am allowed one final point on that, Mr. Huey, in Nevis we were investing, because that's what responsible governments do. We were investing. So all the time they say I spend bad, I was investing. Right? So Mr. Hanley, tell your team I wasn't spending bad. I was ensuring that they have water and electricity. I was developing Nevis, putting in the infrastructure, making sure that we have what it takes to be sustainable. That's what we've been doing in Nevis. Like me, don't like me, we made the right choice in terms of our investments in the island and what we try to do. And that I think now, well, I said the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that's what we are now enjoying in Nevis. Anything further for me?
Well, Mr. Brantley, I got another question from the question you just asked there. You said that the federal government created a sovereign wealth fund, and where will the funds come from? Well, some time ago I heard the federal government said that the funds will be coming from projects like geothermal. So my question to you is, will a committee be put in place for the sovereign wealth fund, which a fund will be coming from geothermal? And how many members from Nevis do you think will be on that committee, if any at all?
Mr. Hanley, it really takes me back to the conversation we were having before, because I can't see how you're going to have a sovereign wealth fund with geothermal funds, but no representation from Nevis. That to my mind, one only has to say it to dismiss it, because that can't happen. And I'm not saying that because I'm here. Whoever is in this position, speaking to you a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, will tell you the same thing. That can't happen. So we will have to, those matters are matters that we will have to discuss. As I said, all hands on deck now with CARICOM. So once CARICOM is over, we'll get down to some of the nitty-gritty of this, right? But if you're talking about a sovereign wealth fund which will have any aspect of geothermal revenues going into it, the geothermal project is a Nevis project.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up. But one thing I want to say, you see, as much talk as the Premier just talk and say, none of the sovereign wealth fund money could come from geothermal. If that legislation is put in the federal parliament tomorrow, the Premier is going to get up and support the legislation. And then he gonna come back Nevis and he gonna cuss and he gonna say, he no been all of that they been in there. And he no been no so they been going to interpret it. But let we just see. But then again, you know what I'm gonna do? No, he wasn't there. So he have a convenient excuse. He did not attend, I think, that session when they did the sovereign wealth fund. But I'm gonna go back to double check. But outside of that, people, as I tell you, this gas thing ain't going nowhere. Be responsible. Invest in a real things, invest in the things where I produce. Right now is not necessarily a speculation time. So invest in something where you're going to see, going to produce an actual product. And stay cranking. Deal with each other, respect one another, continue to build communities, continue talk to other people, whether they got your interest or diverse interest, something you just need a little open up. But anyway, that's all for today. Sunday is a big game, Sunday 11:30, and I'll see y'all Monday. If I see me in blue, things went well. So we'll see if I could wear some baby blue next week, Monday. I'll see how you take care of yourself. See if we could find a screen. So.
To believe in myself, put nobody above myself. Energy, energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see, what a sight to see. What a colossal, working and working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on, it's right on the corner. Hey, Make way when I wear there. Aye, tell the hater them stay there. Aye, that is your destiny. Maybe what you ought to be. Even if no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no one can see you fly.